our fourth day, and it is time for the Dhamma talk. All consent with 3 times, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Ida gahapati asutavato putujjano Ariyanam adassavi ariya dhammi akovido ariya dhammi avinito Sapprisanam adassavi sapprisa dhammi avinito sapprisa dhammi akovido Sanya attano samanupassati Sanya vantang va attanang attaniva sanyang Sanyaya va attanang ayang sanyang mama sanyati pairupattita pariyuttita oti. My friends, we started this series of Dhamma talk based on a particular discourse delivered by the omniscient one, the Buddha, and you find it in the out of his 3 baskets of teaching in the Sutta Pitaka, specifically in the Samyutta Nikaya and Khanda Samyutta. The particular sutta is known as Nakulapitu Sutta, and the history, the background, the case history was the Nakulapita, the very devoted elderly householder, pay a visit to the Buddha, and he explained his situation due to his old age and the weaknesses in his body. Even though he wished to pay visit to the Buddha frequently, like earlier, nowadays it is impossible. Therefore, today he, with all the pains, with difficulties came, and therefore he paid respect to the Buddha. And after paying respect and given this explanation, the Buddha says, yes, dear the householder, this is the case, and that is common for everyone. So Buddha accept his situation and then give a brief advice to the householder, knowing that this is the natural situation. You householder must train in such a way, even the body is inflicted with all the diseases and difficulties, you must try to train your mind not to get inflicted, not to get sick. So he was so happy that with the profound and insight answer the Buddha given, and then he pays respect and take leave. After taking the leave, he in the same trip go to the close by cottage to see Venerable Sariputta, the Maha Sariputta, the chief disciple of the Buddha, and report him what happened at the presence of the Buddha. And after explaining, he says, this was the brief and profound advice from the Buddha, that my duty must be to keep my stream of consciousness, the mind, uninflicted, even though the body is inflicted. Even the body is sick, I must keep my mind healthy. So with that remark, when he's concluding his narration, Venerable Sariputta asked him a very pragmatic question. Isn't that occur to your mind, the householder, to ask from the Buddha, what is the way one can keep the stream of consciousness free of infliction or free of diseases amidst of all the bodily diseases? Then he says, I am sorry, it did not occur to me, but anyway, even if such a thing happened, when I go home, I would walk all the way distance to person like you, So therefore, whenever such a thing happens, we come and consult you. Therefore, I beg your explanation. Why don't you give the answer for the same question you raised instead of the Buddha? So with this invitation, when Sariputta says, if that is the case, the dear householder, listen carefully, and I am going to give you the answer, or going to give you the practical way, how one can keep the stream of consciousness clear, healthy and uninflicted, even though the bodily he is inflicted and sick. So, in this particular discourse, then onward it go into the subject matter in detail. It is, when you read the whole story, the content of the sutta, it seems a person or an entity or a being could be divided into 5 aggregates, and each and every aggregate we can consider under the light of this question. For example, the 5 aggregates, namely the materiality, the body, the corporeal body as an aggregate, and the feelings as an aggregate, perception as an aggregate, mental formations or fabrications as an aggregate, and the consciousness as an aggregate. So Venerable Sariputta, he take each and every individually and say, even the body, that the materiality being inflicted, one must keep the mind uninflicted and healthy way, and that is the first part of the answer, and we try to deal it according to Venerable Sariputta's answer in the first and the second sermons or talks. And yesterday we took the feelings as such. Even the feelings are inflicting, how one can still keep the mind free of diseases and free of infliction. And today, the phrase that I quoted out of this particular sutta, leading us to the perception as an aggregate. He says, under this context, the householder, the commoner, uninstructed being, who has not seen any noble people and not trained under the noble restrainment and have no any experience on that line, neither he has seen spiritual friends, noble friends. He has not trained according to the lineage of the noble friends, and he has no any experience on that. Under such circumstances, he considers his own perception as myself. Or he says, he thinks the self has some forms of perceptions, and or otherwise perception in self or self is in perception. This kind of one or the other beliefs, one or the other views he clinging to. This is the one of the wrong perception or one of the wrong views. One can tend to take it. And if I am to make a remark on this situation, in the world there are 2 basic beliefs, part and parcel of the whole population believe either in materiality or materialism or eternalism. Those who are believing on the materialism or physical part, they consider the physical body as the entity or the being or self, and they never believe any kind of a non-materialistic part in their body, because that cannot be proved, that cannot be tested. So they take this scientific kind of approach. They take only the materialistic part, therefore they are being called the materialists. And some other part, those who are accepting this eternal, everlasting soul, they consider not the materiality or corporeality of the body as the self, because it rising and passing away when you can see it. So that means it is impermanent and we can test it. But they believe in the eternal continuity in the being or self, and so they believe either on feelings or perception or mental formations or the consciousness as such. So this set of belief or wrong deductions or thinking, views happening among these eternalistic kind of people. So materialistic consider these things as mystics, because perception as such you can't put into the lab, you can't repetitively test it, and therefore they consider they are something mystic, it is intangible, therefore they don't believe anything. But those who are believing this inerrancy kind of thing, they consider what the materialistic belief is very crucial, very crude, and that is to be tested, but that is not the real whole story of the being. Therefore they think that materialism is very childish or nothing seriousness, but instead they think we are very serious, and therefore there is an eternalism and continuity of the soul. So that is what based on the feelings or perception or mental formations or consciousness. So this is also coming under such category. So anyone who going to consider the soul or self as a perception, or perception as self, or perception as self as some form of perception, or self is based upon this perception, such a people, whenever perception become prominent, they consider this is me, this is mine. So whenever someone take it as an eternal, everlasting perception, as me or as mine, under such circumstances, whenever the perception going to transfer or transcend nature, then his soul will be shaken, his view will be shaken, and his concept will be shaken. Therefore, they tend to undergo lamentation, sorrow, and despair, and all the kind of mental sicknesses. That is how mentally and physically such people going to fall into sick or into inflictions. So whenever the perception going to change, they take it as a serious damage for their self or kind of thing, and therefore whenever the perception undergoing any impermanence or transience or any changes, they consider it is to be a damage to oneself, and therefore their mind become anxious or depressed, or any kind of infliction can happen. So instead, Venerable Sariputta is telling those who have seen noble people and trained according to the noble restrainment and have certain amount of experience, or those who have seen the spiritual friends and trained according to them and have some kind of experience, they never tend to believe that perception as self, or self as perception, or self has some kind of a form of perception, or self is based on the perception. So therefore, whenever the perception going to manifest, perception going to be prominent, they never hold into this perception as this is me and this is mine. They know the perception as perception, but never recognize this perception is me or this perception is mine. And therefore, even though the perception going to undergo some impermanence and changes, he is not directly inflicted, or his stream of consciousness not subjected to fall into sicknesses, mental sicknesses directly. That is how the way out from this inflicted, the perception-based inflictions in the thought or the mind. So that is the what we are going to take it as the today's topic, and will, as the time permits, try to see in meditation how far we fall into the trap of understanding the perception as me, or how far we have been managed to see the perception as perception, get a distance from it, and accordingly, even though perception is undergoing changes or impermanence, how far we can be free of suffering, specifically in the mind. The perception come into being in the meditation, specifically in Vipassana, in two ways. The early part of meditation, for example, when someone is trying to start or introduce or define the mindfulness in his or her own way, he or she has to make use the perception in order to recognize, in order to establish, in order to familiarize this idea of mindfulness. So therefore one has to first listen and understand and one has to perceive the meaning of the mindfulness. So therefore the listening and deductive knowledge and rational understanding, the word meaning of mindfulness, or word meaning of diligence, or word meaning of vigilance, itself is something related to perception. And mindfulness in Pali, in the Pali language it is known as sati. The diligence, the English term diligence, is in Pali it is called appamada. So they have the appamada and sati considered synonyms basically in the Pali canon. They have its own characteristics, its own manifestations, its own function, and its own proximate cause. So it says the character of the sati, or mindfulness, is the non-superficiality, or otherwise the penetrating character. Whenever the mind is just superficial and swift, that means it is not mindful. Whenever the mind is penetrating into a particular object, maybe primary object or object of meditation, whatever it may be, that is the characteristic of mindfulness. It says apilapana lakhana in Pali commentaries. Pilapana means the wobbling or superficial. Apilapana means the opposite of the wobbling character. The example given is the old traditional books in the canon, specifically the commentarial. It says a pumpkin fruit, dried and empty, when you put into the water, it is just wobbling on the water, never sink. In the modern day, we can say if you put a piece of rigiform or a cork, it is just wobbling on the water according to the waves on the water body. So it is not penetrating, it is just if the wind happens, it flow here and float here and there. Or if there is small water currents, it will carried away accordingly. That is to say, unmindfulness. Whenever the mind becomes mindful, or whenever the mind becomes vigilant, the example given is if you put a pebble or piece of iron into a water, it immediately penetrates and go to the rock bottom of the water body, until that it never stops. Likewise, whenever the mindfulness come into being, or the diligence come into being, it never floats, it never wobbles superficially, it penetrates into the object of meditation or whatever. So that is how we try to experiment with, we try to experience the mindfulness. So, for example, if someone is to take a sitting meditation session and take in-breath and out-breath as the object of meditation, whenever the mindfulness is working, it is mind become face-to-face with the in-breath and out-breath, and each time a new in-breath going to happen and out-breath going to happen, the mindfulness brings the meditative mind and the in-breath closer and closer and closer. And immediate it bakes. So more and more you observe the in-breath and out-breath, you have a very close observation, the beginning of the in-breath, the middle of the in-breath and the end of the in-breath. Beginning of the out-breath, the middle of the out-breath and the end of the out-breath. Whenever you manage to keep the in-breath and out-breath for a continuous observation, you must not be contented or happy just by observing the beginning, the middle and the end. You must try to experience it. What is the difference between the in-breath experience and the out-breath experience? That is, you are rubbing against the object. So to experience in a discrete manner, for example, if you observe very closely, very immediately, you may sometimes feel the in-breath air is somewhat cooler with compared to the out-breath air. So you are observing very closely in order to make the mindfulness efficient, make the mindfulness more penetrating. Or sometimes you may see the in-breath experience is shorter and out-breath experience is longer, or maybe other way around, vice versa. In-breath experience is longer and out-breath experience shorter. Sometimes you may feel the rubbing sensation. It is like a wave-like, or continuity-like, or breaking-like. So many facets and many shapes. All these shapes and manners indicate your mind is, the meditative mind is, not observe the in-breath and out-breath superficially. It is penetrating and becoming more and more immediate, more and more close. So these are the characteristics one to judge oneself whether mindfulness is intact or mind is shifting from thinking, from the object of meditation to thinking, or distracted by the bodily pains or external sounds. When such a thing happens, the penetrating quality is little disturbed. So therefore you are training your mind in the practice of mindfulness or practice of insight, taking the insight, in-breath and out-breath as the primary object. Keep the mind, keep the noting mind as proximate as possible, as close as possible, as continuous as possible with the arising object. And through that, once the mindfulness developed, or once the mindfulness gets footing. Later, the very same mindfulness you can use to, or you can apply to the bodily sensations also. Yeah, at the beginning, bodily sensation may be like a nuisance or disturbance or a secondary object. But once the mindfulness develops, the bodily sensation also you can feel in a very discrete way. And whenever the sound happens, or whenever wandering mind, daydreaming, fantasizing happens, you can clearly understand now my mind is in thinking, not in breath. Or my mind is with bodily pains, feelings, not in the primary. Or it is listening outside sounds, not in the primary. Whenever the primary object comes face to face with, one can clearly understand, now I experience the in-breath, not the out-breath. Not the thought, not the sound, not the pain. And when the out-breath happens, clearly one can understand, now I am experiencing face to face with not the in-breath, not the sound, not the thought, not the pain. And likewise that discrete understanding happens, that is the character of the mindfulness. And whenever the mindfulness comes into being, with this character of penetrating, it keeps the object more and more face to face. The mindfulness is not intact, the objects are changing very fast, you can't keep the track. And therefore you become desperate and you become disheartened and you become discouraged. But when the mindfulness is going to train, you can keep the in-breath and out-breath longer, or face-to-face longer. That is not a magic, that is not a external kind of force. What you do is, even amidst of thoughts, you never going to take thought as a distraction. You try to see through thoughts and still experience in breath and out breath. Not worrying about or not reacting to thoughts, but still see whenever the thoughts are going to come again and again, try to see through thoughts and see whether still can I understand the in-breath and out. Maybe some pains or bodily sensations, still you can see through them and still try to contact in-breath and out. Or there may be external sounds. If as far as these sounds are not addressing to you, it is not meant for you, you keep it aside or see through the sounds and try to keep it the in-breath and out-breath. So the more and more you develop, become mindful, you can keep the in-breath and out-breath more longer. I am taking the sitting meditation. They are the example of in-breath and out-breath. If someone is taking the rising and falling the abdomen or any other object, exactly the same. If someone is doing the walking meditation, more and more by become mindful, you can keep the attention with the left leg, left leg, right leg, amidst of all the sceneries and hearings and all the other kind of things. So therefore the function of the mindfulness is known as keeping the object face to face with. And the manifestation, the way one can understand the mindfulness is that you become doubtless. Your mind becomes very clear. Now thoughts also there. The in-breath thoughts also there. Should I go for a thought or contemplate upon that, or should I go to the in-breath and out-breath? No such a bewilderment, no such a hastiness. He or she can't know the thought is the secondary object, my primary object is the in-breath and out-breath, so I have to see through and keep the primary object face to face. In the walking meditation also, your eyes are open and there are visual objects also there, and sounds also more prominent, maybe more than sitting meditation. And you have to intentionally lift your leg and note it. whatever may be, you know what is to be maximized. And therefore, the sharpness, what to do, become very clear. And this clarity help you to furthering your meditation into your day-to-day activities also. When the multitask things happening, your aim or your priority must be with the intentional action what you do. For example, when you are taking a meal, you know you are eating, and meanwhile there may be a running television in front of you, newspaper side by you, or radio is working, and someone is talking, and so many things are happening. Under such circumstances, if someone is mixed up or bewildered, then has to ask from a senior member or a teacher what to do and where should I keep my attention. So answer is, what is the intentional action you do? Keep that as your primary object. Be mindful on that. Consider others as secondary object. Likewise, there is clarity. Keeping the object face to face with become easier. And the proximate factor for such a continuity of mindfulness is the firm perception. So now the perception comes into being in order to develop the mindfulness. What does it mean by the firm perception? For example, when you are sitting and meditating, taking the in-breath, out-breath as your primary object, there may be some thoughts, recurrent thoughts, or inert kind of thoughts, or background kind of thoughts, and again and again and again it comes. Appear like a nuisance to your primary. Under such circumstances, you can just note the primary object as in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, as and when it occurs. Or you can simply say in, out, in, out, in, out, in order to not to pay attention to the thought, but on the primary object that which you wish to maximize. There, this perception is, you are making use, we call labeling, or we call noting, and so that you don't give a priority to the secondary object or nuisance, instead you can maximize the primary object. This will be, this is a good technique. Even in the walking meditation, if the nuisance thoughts or inner thoughts or background thoughts going to happen, and if it is often interrupting you, what you can do is you can just note as and when you are moving the right leg, right, right. Or when you are moving the left leg, left, left. If the thoughts going to accelerate, in order to reduce the nuisance, what you can do is you can note the right in a very recurrent way, right, 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 right. Or when the left is moving, left, 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 left. This frequent noting helps you to bring the primary object face to face. So therefore perception is being used here in order to maximize or strengthen or durability of the primary object. Durability of the mindfulness. And there is a second proximate cause also given in the commentary, that is to say, the proximate cause for the mindfulness is nothing but the mindfulness. That is to say, your past trial and error, your mistakes are the teacher for the mindfulness to become steadfast. There is no other tablet or injection or any operation or any blessings from the outside. You have to somehow or the other start it. At the beginning you find it is very difficult. Mind is wandering off and distractions are there. But while making effort, slowly you will develop ways and means to keep the mind face to face with the object. And that very experience is or success is the proximate cause for the next day success. So therefore, whenever you develop mindfulness, this very perception or labeling or noting or cognition help you to keep the mindfulness intact. So now with such a background, with such a knowledge, when you are managing to keep the primary object for a longer time comparatively, you are getting a better chance to see the chronological order of changes in the primary object against the time. This can explain in a number of ways, but simply when you become more and more experienced in mindfulness, you will see at the beginning, once soon you sit, if you manage to keep the in-breath and out-breath fairly continuous, the early breaths are gross or longer in the perception. That is why in the Satipatthana Sutta, the famous where you find the instructions of the Buddha in detail, it says, Digang vasa santo digang asa samiti pajanati, digang va passa santo digang passa samiti pajanati. As and when the in-breath happens, he understands the touching experience is longer in in-breath. And whenever the touching experience of the out-breath is longer, he recognizes accordingly as it is long. As the meditation continue, or as far as mindfulness is continuous, slowly you will understand the in-breath experience, the touching experience becomes shorter, and the out-breath experience also becomes shorter. That is because when you are sitting in a comfortable and collected and calm manner, naturally the breath becomes shorter. Not like you are in a running position or in a very active place. But unless otherwise you are sharp enough, you never notice it. So one of the functions of the mindfulness is to see the difference between the early in-breaths and the later in-breaths. Early out-breath and the late out-breath. So we can put that the same thing in a very dramatic way. If you are really following the instructions given as to compare the in-breath versus out-breath, then it is gross. As to say, in-breath is cooler, out-breath is warmer, in-breath is rubbing on your left nostril, and the out-breath is maybe on your top of your upper lip, or that kind of changes. The very beginning you are being instructed to know and discreetly understand the difference between the in-breath and out-breath. More and more you understand more shapes and the manners and the characteristics, that is called natural characteristics. Ultimately, naturally, the mindfulness will note the difference between the in-breath versus in-breath, out-breath versus out-breath. That is how you can start to understand the chronological changes of the in-breath to in-breath, out-breath to out-breath. When this is happening, but usually, if you are not much interrupted with the thoughts and the sounds and the pains, you can see the gross in-breath becomes subtle, gross out-breath becomes subtle, and more the subtlety happens. Sometimes, due to this gross becomes subtle and subtle becomes subtlest, the mind will slip off and you feel like in a slumber or in sleeping. All of a sudden you get a jerk and come back to in-breath and out-breath. Or sometimes you feel the meditation is boring. It has become monotonous. It is lack of less dramatic. And therefore sometimes you give up, thinking that my mindfulness is becoming weaker, my concentration becomes weaker. My teacher asked me to see in-breath and out-breath, but no more in-breath and out-breath. Therefore, maybe something wrong with me. So either they fall into sleep, or sometimes they entertain doubts, or sometimes they open their eyes, or sometimes they tend to force breathing. So these kind of thing happens if you are uninstructed, if you are not really doing interviews and discuss with an experienced person. But if you are really reporting what is happening, the instructor, the experienced people can let you know it is nothing related to the inefficiency of the mindfulness or your personal mistakes. This is the way things are happening. If you are to observe anything in the world continuously, more and more you associate, less and less it becomes dramatic. More and more to associate, less and less it becomes titillating. More and more it becomes boring. So that is why we always change our clothing, change our foods, change our dwellings, change our cars, change our everything. Because association with one thing for long definitely leading to kind of a boredom. It's a kind of a monotonous, kind of a lack of interest. Less dramatic it becomes. So this is the trick the Buddha asks us to experience. Keep the in-breath and out-breath face-to-face for longer time, and there are some kind of changes. This is called changes of your perceptions, and this is given in an example, one to understand in a dramatic way. When the Coca-Cola business was catching in the whole world, all of a sudden the Pepsi-Cola came, and the Pepsi people advertised, you go and have a sip of Pepsi and see it is very dramatic. It's very tasty. So therefore, this is something reported in the book, and I read, that is what I am giving as an example. And then ultimately the Coca-Cola people came to a threatening in their market, and ultimately they have hired a market promotion manager, and he tested it. And he found, of course, the Pepsi, the very first sip is very sweet. But if you manage to sip the whole can, separately one Coca-Cola and one Pepsi, the end result is not like the first sip. This is called sensational transference. So he asked a panel of testers and to sip the whole can. One person, one panel for the Pepsi and one panel for the Coca-Cola. And then they found, even though the first sip is very, very tasty, when you are towards the end of the can, your desire or favorite is more towards the Pepsi than more towards the Coca-Cola than the Pepsi. So therefore, he studied this sensational transference beneficial towards the Coca-Cola, and that made a difference, and ultimately again the Coca-Cola gained the market crowd. So this sensational transference is the one we miss in our day-to-day life. And instead what we do is, we change the objects, we change the recipes, we change the costumes, we change all the places, all the objects, and whatever you are going to do, this sensational transference is the truth. So this sensational transference, if you are to make use, you have to associate one particular object for longer time, and then you will understand this is what we call the changing nature, the transient nature. If you do not know, you try to overcome this sensational transference by different objects, or changing your girlfriend or boyfriend, changing your recipe, changing your food, changing your clothing, changing your car, changing your housing, all the kind of thing. But so much so, you are hiding the very fact, the sensational transfer. So the day you understand the sensational transfers of the in-breath and out-breath, you will see more you to observe, less and less it becomes interested. More and more it becomes boring. More and more it becomes monotonous, less dramatic, and sometimes fearful. Sometimes uncertainty, sometimes leading to doubts. So this sensation transfer is the what we call as sanya or perception. So if you are not sharp enough to see this, you will instead change your meditation master. You will change the object of meditation. Or say you may change the meditation center thinking this object is not good for me, it is not helpful, and after a while I don't feel it. So therefore I have to change for the next object. Like you keep on changing. Nowadays in the meditation world it's a hell of a problem. Because so much of meditation masters, so much of meditation centers, so much of meditation objects. So people think the one object is not so good, so they are changing masters, changing places and changing objects and keep on doing varietal entertainment, just like materialistic consumerization. This is the spiritual consumerization. It's very common because nowadays meditation is very common in all the Asiatic as well as the Western countries. But you miss the bus. So therefore, this sensation transfer is nothing to get discouraged. That's a very crucial thing for you to understand some facts of life. So they are ultimately, once the day you become mature enough, the day you become prepared, you will try to see these chronological changes and your perception towards one object. And if you keep on practicing day by day to the deeper layers of perception, ultimately you can understand, you can be aware to the point that in-breath and out-breath is completely imperceivable, unperceivable, so subtle, but still the mindfulness is intact. Still the concentration is intact. You are not challenging. You are not falling into sleep. You are not going to do forced breathing. You are not entertaining doubts. So this is the critical point. This is the challenging point for the advanced yogis to train. So whenever you come to this point where the in-breath, out-breath is so subtle, but you definitely know, you trace it, you come up to that level from the gross in-breath and out-breath, slowly becomes subtle, and now you are in the subtlest form, but still not disheartened, not given up. You have the fully vigilant observation, fully mindful observation to see the subtlest form of the in-breath and out-breath. There you see the perception get lost. You can't perceive it. You can't label it, you can't know it, you can't cognize it. And that is the point that you have never tested in your life or with any object. This is kind of threatening, this is kind of challenging, this is kind of fearful, this is kind of a boredom. So, but anyway, you are slowly, day by day, sitting session to sitting session, going to very deep layers. When you go there, you will one day understand there's a kind of a perception. This is not the normal day-to-day perception. You are not unconscious. You are not completely in a lack of consciousness also. It's a strange place. And many disturb this situation due to their egoistic idea, due to their conceit, or due to their desire. Because this place is nothing to get desired, no conceit, no ego you can trace it. So therefore you feel like cornered, you feel like outcast, you feel like lost. So when such a thing happens, the commentators give example like when you go up to that kind of very unperceivable like or very subtle layers, you feel like going into the sea with a very dingy boat, small one, and you lost in the deep sea. You can't see the land. And there you feel lost in your orientation, unless you have sophisticated ways to trace back. Equally, when you go into a desert, specifically you are traveling in the dark night, and if you can't trace back the northern star, or if you are not skillful, when you go deep and deep, you get lost. Exactly the same thing happens when you go into the forest. Hunting or in search of a medicine or kind of thing. So, therefore in the olden people, when they are going to the forest, what they do is, from the village onward to the depth of the forest, they can axe and make markings along the trees. So whenever they go inside, if they wish to come back, they can take its own markings we have done on the barks. Likewise, the person who has gone to this very deep with the in-breath and out-breath, if they have noted it at the gross level and came to know the subtle level and came to know the gradual subtlest form, they will not feel lost. They will understand, yesterday I came to this much of subtlety, today I go little beyond, and tomorrow I will have to go still beyond, so that he can trace back. So that is how you are training the sanya, training the perception, to the very subtle layers. Ultimately, you have to make sure this sanya is not our day-to-day sanya. This is not the kind of a fainted situation, or it is not the non-materialistic kind of jhanic experience, and not without sanya also. That is in the Sutta Nipata, in Kalavivada Sutta, the Buddha says, na sanya sanyi, na pi visanyi, no pi asanyi, na vibhuta sanyi. Evan sametasa vibhuti rupang, sanya nidana hi papancha sankha. He says, in the meditation you will come to a position where this sanya, this kind of a cognition or recognition of perception, is not the day-to-day one, that which you can't perceive the in-breath versus out-breath. Of course, at that level you can't perceive the sounds, the pain, the thoughts, and everything appear like so far away. You are in the center, they are very at a distance, so you can't make them out. And you know you are not fainted, you are not sleepy, and you are not in a deep jhanic experience also. And you can't deny that there is a sanya. There is no sanya, sanya is there. So when such a thing happened, the Buddha observed, he says that your materiality, the in-breath and out-breath, come to the dead end, unperceivable level. And under such circumstances, you feel like threatened. So that is why the entertainment of doubts happen. That is why you feel like opening your eyes happen. That is why you feel like forced breathing happens. So when that happens, Buddha says, all your mental proliferation, all your mental fabrications based on this perception. So when there is no perception, there is no mental fabrications, there is no proliferation. So that is one place where one has to master. That happens only in Vipassana meditation. So many yogis definitely they would have gone to that level, but they never experienced this as the path. Because it is threatening your ego. It is threatening your conceit. And you have to be so generous without any desire to go up to that level. Even if you can go there, it's a completely different business to appreciate it. The moment you appreciate it, you will understand this is the thing you have to master. And this is the point where you commit no any sin. You commit no any volitional action. And completely you are in the whole body experience. This is a contentment. This is the inner contentment one can experience, and there you see to go up to that kind of a contentment, nothing lacking as a human being. Only you pull out of this situation is your desire, your conceit, your ego. Any question come out of this, any doubt come out of this, is based upon either one of these things, the desire, the conceit and the ego. So, definitely there may be some doubts, there may be some questions. So you could press back and see from where these doubts come, whether am I in the correct path or wrong. Everything come out of this desire or conceit or ego. So, more and more you master, you yourself will assimilate ways and means to go quickly to that state and be as long as possible in this situation. When you go there, you know you feel like at home. And you feel this is not the result of meditation. From the birth itself you had it, but you hate it. You don't like it. You don't think it has a meditative advanced stage, or you don't think it as a real middle path. So therefore it's just a matter of the perception, just a matter of correct view, just a matter of correct perception. And the day you come up to that, you will try your best to keep the mind as much as possible at home. And when you come back to the senses, for example, seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the touching, the tasting or thinking, it's a kind of an agitation. This is unturbulent flow of the consciousness. Any turbulent happen, it appears like a seeing or hearing or tasting or smelling or touching or thinking. So therefore for the first time maybe you understand the drastic difference. How to maintain your stream of consciousness, at least without the turbulent, with compared to the whole life of turbulence. So this is the only difference between the human and the animals. Human can experience these two sides, two options. Of course, through the experience, through meditation, through restrainment, and they are the huge adventure is understanding this as more healthy than the turbulence. But the Eric Fromm, the philosopher, he says human has a kind of fear of freedom. If this is the freedom, it appears like kind of a fear. It kind of a cornering, appear like a decasting, outcasting. So therefore we think other perceptions are better. It gives some familiarity. It gives some protection. But you don't know how much you have to pay for that. So therefore, the day you go there and the day you appreciate it, understand, so much so you would have come up to that, but never you appreciate it. But today when you go there, if you can appreciate it and master it for longer time, more and more healing of the mind and the body happens. More and more coming to the center, it happens. So, to come up to that level, or can experience it, there is nothing lacking. What you need is the correct perspective. So therefore, when Sariputta says, if someone is not going to recognize that the perception as me, or me, myself as perception, or the perception has a form of, self as a form of perception, or self is anchored in perception, and such people get this as something abnormal. Ultimately, they will open their eyes and start kind of a turbulent, and that is the point where the mind becomes sick. The instant, whenever such the perception come up to that healthy and unturbulent path, if someone is not going to recognize this as a threat, and instead try to dwell upon that, there he will understand the healthy mind, or meditative mind, or contented mind, or serenity of the mind. And that is how you can give an option whereby more and more familiarization, more and more seasoning, you can ask the mind which one you like. If you need varietal entertainment, go show, and a dramatic life, of course you can do it. But for the first time you can give the other part, and there it is so healing, it's so contented, so self-sufficient, inalienable, unalloyed. And if you can understand this is one of the spiritual and religious kind of achievement, then you are free to use either one. And there you become a little bit more and more independent from this perception. That does not indicate you are going to cut off from that. Whenever necessary, you can come to the perception that is being related with the senses, the visual objects, sounds, smells, tastes, tangible objects and thoughts. Whenever you need, you can go there. Just like in the warfare, if you wish, you can fight with the weapon in your hand, face to face with the enemy in the battlefront. But if you feel, if you wish to withdraw back, you can go to the bunker, withdraw yourself and organize your warfare and strategies, and then again with the organized mind you can go there and fight. So likewise in the human, if someone take this as a bunker, he or she will understand even the body is inflicted, even the outside people are inflicted. There is a kind of a healing point, there's a kind of a central unturbulent mind, and where you go there, you can keep the mind unturbulent, mind uninflicted. The mind is healthy. So the way one can understand this, even though body is inflicted, how one can keep the mind uninflicted through the aggregate of perception. So when you are practicing, you partially experience it, but I hope this set of information and practical hints that I try to present will help you to correct yourself and develop the confidence whenever the chances are there to not to hesitate and come back, but to go forward so that your immunity, your balanced mind, equipoised mind will be developed, and so your tolerance capacity will be increased. And this is not a great achievement as far as in the meditation is concerned, but it's a necessary achievement. And then only you will, just like going away from this earth and stay in the orbit, either you can go to the space odyssey, no gravity, or you can come back to the earth where there's a gravity. And likewise you are in the halfway. So this is also a great adventure. So therefore inside meditation, while you are keep on practicing, if you really do the fine adjustments and the correct perspectives, it is leading to a great adventure, and then onward you can, if you wish, you can be an astronaut and go to the space odyssey where there is no space, the gravity. And no much of other objects to come and hit you. But if you come back to the earth, you will be subject to the gravity, and a lot of impediments have happened. So therefore you become better off by keeping halfway. This is to the perception. So in time to come, we will try to deal with this, how the volition or mental fabrication and the mind itself help us to either to get trapped in this vicious world, or to make use the very same aggregates to understand it and get the path of liberation. Thank you very much for listening. That's all for today's talk. Yes?
By perception, you what you're talking about.
So this is that normal, that is what you call the day-to-day perception. Actually, this very perception we are using to take the in-breath and out-breath face-to-face. We use the breath. It's through the normal perception, so that we keep away the thinking, keep away the listening, keep away the bodily pains, and just to keep the breath face-to-face. Through perception only you come to know I am with the breath, not with the pain, not with the sound, not with the thinking life. So it's nothing special. Normal day-to-day perception. No. So therefore in the Nasanya Sanye, Nopi Asanye, Asanya Sanye, Nopi Visanye. And that particular stanza, the Buddha says, this state is not the day-to-day perception and not unconscious, not jhana, not without the perception. And that is how we define this state. So therefore, asanya sanya means the non-material jhanic state. But this is very vivid, very open-eyed, not open-eyed I mean, very open mindfulness. You can experience it, unless otherwise you challenge, you don't get frightened. You don't make in doubt out of that, then you can experience it. It's like an absorption in a jhana. The jhana, you have no intuitivity. But here you have the intuitivity. You can understand the impermanent nature, you can understand the suffering nature, you can understand the selflessness. But in the jhana, you are in a benumbed or anesthetized form. You can't analyze. Analytical power, intuitivity is not there. But here you have. That is the greatness in this vipassana.
You can think like
intuitive. The thinking is a limited part of the intuitive, inquiring mind. The inquiring nature is there, unchanged. Inquiry. You can inquire and you can investigate.
That means that is very alert.
Yeah, you can say the alertness, vigilance, the diligence, the mindfulness, all are there, but you are not employing it. You are not inquiring. You are not thinking. But the thinking capacity is unchallenged. It is there. So therefore it is a new opening, new window. One day, those who are taking this continuous retreat, we thought of starting interviews, 10 minutes each, from 6 o'clock onward till 7:30, I can allocate time, 10 minutes each. But when I am doing interviews with the female yogis, there should have a male close by. I can give 1.5 hours, starting from 6 o'clock. Yes, we can go to the temple. Others will be meditating.